Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at some really good foundational functions, just some universal drawing functions. As you can see, we're going to draw a button. It's a very nice button. A lot of parameters, and we're going to do mouse detection. So we're just going to get right into. We're going to look at the mouse detection. So we have three. Um, Get mouse coordinate is the most basic one. It takes in a GUI parameter, which is basically true or false, are we in the GUI event? And within this, we store the mouse as an array, basically a vector, two coordinates inside it. If we're in the GUI layer, we want to use display mouse get x. Now, this works if you are on Windows, and if your target platform is Windows or Mac. What you'll see in here is that it works properly on Windows and Mac targets. You can use it for HTML5, but it's probably not as consistent. And it might, I don't know what it will return if it won't return a value while the mouse is outside. So you'd have to, it seems a little iffy because if it doesn't return a value, I don't know what it returns if the mouse is outside, but you could probably make it work. You just have to check the value that it returns. Otherwise, you want to use the device mouse, which is essentially not. I don't know why it has mouse in it. It doesn't have to be a mouse. It just has to be a device. It's being checked. But you definitely need to experiment and make sure it's working with other platforms. So yeah, we store the X position of the mouse within the GUI and the Y position. Otherwise, we just use the coordinates as they are in the room. And then we return that array, and all is dandy. Secondly, we have detecting if our mouse is within a rectangular region, which would include square regions. This is useful. Most buttons and things that you click are going to be rectangular. It makes it easy for checking if the mouse is on it. You don't have to worry about collisions or anything. It's just checking numbers. So mouse within rectangle takes in two corners, typically top left, bottom right, but as long as they are opposite corners, so top left, bottom right, or bottom left, top right, this will work. And then obviously, are we in the draw GUI, because we have to get the mouse coordinates right here and store those. And then we use median to check if our mouse is between the two values. It simply returns the middlemost value. It returns the median of the set of numbers. So by passing in the x coordinate of one side of the rectangle and the x coordinate of the other side of the rectangle and our mouse, we will be able to determine whether or not the mouse is within the region. Same goes for the y coordinate or vertical component. And if it's within both of those regions, we true, saying yes, we're within the rectangle. If not, we return false. Mouse isn't there. Really easy stuff, but it's really universally compatible. It's going to save you a lot of room, so you don't have to worry about the mouse coordinates and typing out the median. It's a long if statement. Lastly, we can also check if we have the in a circle, where we just want the center of the circle, the radius, which is a real number, and whether we're in the GUI. Once we pass those in, we just get our mouse coordinates, like always, and then we calculate the distance that our mouse is from the center of the circle, compare that with the radius, and if we're within that radius, that radial distance, then we return true. If not, we're outside the boundary, return false. Super easy function, very handy to have, saves a lot of lines just calling this. My only error is that I haven't tested it. I'm pretty confident it'll work. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments, I guess. But I see no reason why this wouldn't work. Very, very short, simple. So I will open this up one more time if you want to pause to copy that. And then if you want to pause to copy rectangle. And then if you want to pause to copy mouse within circle. All right, then we'll go on to a application example. An application of using these functions would be draw button rectangle. Basically, this function will draw us a button based on two opposing coordinates. It'll have a border around it that has you can determine the thickness in pixels. And it's going to have three color states for the border color, the background color, and the text color. It will have a color for just the mouse is nowhere near it, a color for when the mouse is hovering, and a color for if we're actively clicking the left mouse button. Same goes for border, background, text color, and then we pass in the font ID, the index of the font that we want to use, and string that we're going to use, and then whether we're in the GUI event. Once you pass all those in, it's a lot to pass in, which can get a little repetitive, but when you're making it very dynamic and the colors changing depending on where the mouse is, it's very handy to have it all in one function. I'd rather write however many parameters this is. I'd rather type out all these parameters than type out all this code every time I want to draw a button. So that makes it worth it for me. You need to make sure, though, that since we use mouse within rectangle to detect whether the mouse is hovering, you will need to pair this script with mouse detection. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's not going to return. It's going to error out because this function won't exist in your program unless. So draw button rectangle, we get a true or false value whether the mouse is hovering over the rectangle, and then whether the left mouse button is currently being held down. And that's just useful because we'll use it over here. I get a color format array to save space. You'll see why. We're going to say, oh, are we hovering and clicking? Then it's going to use the background color press. It's going to use the press colors. So background, border, text, hovering and clicking colors. Else, if we are just hovering and not clicking, we're going to use the hover parameters for the colors. Otherwise, our mouse is nowhere near it, so we're going to use just the generic colors for the background, border, and text, and store those in an array so that when we want to set the color, we don't have to check if we're hovering or clicking again. That's the only time we have to do that. Bottom layer of the rectangle or the button is going to be the background. So we basically, easy enough, we set the color based on index 0 of C, which gives us the proper background color. And then we draw the rectangle just from the corner to corner. Really simple. And then I'll leave that open if you want to copy it. And then for drawing the border, we set the color, same way we did for the background. And then the border has a thickness in pixels. So we want to draw that many rectangles getting 1 pixel smaller for each thickness. So if border thickness is 5, we're going to loop through this 5 times. And we're going to start at just the edge of the rectangle. Boom, draw an outline. And then at I equals 1, we're going to draw an outline of the rectangle that's 1 pixel shorter. So it's over 1, down 1, up 1, left 1. It's being shrunk pixel by pixel, or whatever the thickness is. Typically, I recommend a thickness of 2 at the smallest and maybe 4 at the biggest. It doesn't need to scale up with the size of the rectangle, because if if your button is huge, you don't want the thickness of the border to be huge, because it's not pleasing. I find that it doesn't look pleasing to the eye. So keep this number fairly small, I would recommend. So that will draw the border. Super easy. And then drawing the text, you just want to set the text properties to the font, and then we're going to use a center middle alignment. For the text, we're just going to draw the text in the center and middle of the button, horizontally and vertically. We're going to set the font, set the color, E2, and then we just draw the text. And this is basically just a formula that will generically get you the center horizontally, center vertically, and that works no matter what corners they give you, as long as they're opposing. And it obviously draws the string. So I will zoom out so you can see this all on screen at once. If you would like to copy this, there's the whole thing at once. As I said, source code will also be in the comments. This works great. And then just to test it out, I have made a font and a room to test it, and our object creates the parameters that I need to pass in. I know our GUI size. I make sure that's our GUI. It's the same as the room size, 1600 by 900. Since that's plenty small for my monitor, 1920 by 1080, so I know it'll fit, no problem. I can end the. All right, so when we test it, we're going from a 256 by 64 width rectangle. I give the corners, it's centered on the center of the GUI. And border colors, so when you're nowhere near it, the background will be black, and that is to match the testing room's background. Just so that it looks like it has an invisible back. And then when you hover over it, the background's gonna be light gray, and then when you press dark gray, and the color's gonna change. Font, string, test button. So let's run it. As you can see, our test button, black background, white coloring. While we're not pressing it, if we hover, it's going to put light gray on the background. It's going to change the border color to blue and the text color to, I think that's either aqua or teal, one of those. And then if I hold down the left mouse button, you can see that all the colors change, so it's working properly. You leave it while you're holding down, hovering. So yeah, these are very useful functions that you can use in most, if not all, projects. Should be very universal to your project. Just make sure you're drawing it at the right spaces, and then you're passing in whether it's in the GUI or not. That about sums it up for today. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave it down in the comments, and thank you so much for your time.